Prabhupada taught me to cook one preparation called bati chachari. It is made with pottle and potatoes. And you put a lot of ghee and a lot of chili, lot of red chili. And so Prabhupada asked me to cook that preparation. But Prabhupada's stomach was not very good at that time. So while preparing that, I felt that I should not put so much red chili. So I cooked it, with, no, he had stomach problem. I mean, his stomach was not so good. So he didn't want any red chili. And he didn't want any red chili in there. I mean, I didn't put any red chili, thinking that, like his stomach was not good. And when I served, Prabhupada just took a bite and he became very angry. He said that I personally taught you how to cook it and you forgot. And he was very, very heavy, And not only at that time, for next 2 days, whenever I went near him, he just blasted me. And his point was, he personally taught me how to cook that, and I forgot. And not only he chastised me, whoever went to him, he also told him how useless I was. Then on the third day, when Prabhupada's anger subsided to some extent, and Prabhupada kind of, rather in a mild way this time, he asked me, how could you forget when I personally taught you? And then I told Prabhupada, I didn't actually forget. I deliberately didn't put it because I thought your stomach was not good. And red chili will not be good for your condition. Then Prabhupada told me, then why didn't you tell me all this while? And then he told me that ghee is hot and chili is hot. But when there is a lot of ghee and a lot of chili, they counteract each other's effect.
Another example, in a completely different context, is Mr. Sethi in Bombay. Mr. Sethi was a life member and a great Sankirtan devotee. He was an older man. And he had a construction company. So when we were first building the additional floors on the existing buildings at the back of Hare Krishna land, he did the job. And so when the first ashram was almost ready, he took Srila Prabhupada up to see it. And Srila Prabhupada started to give us instructions about how we should live there. And he said that that every morning we should lift everything off the floor, and the floor should be washed with water. Then he gave some instructions. And then he said to Mr. Sethi that just as you are building these rooms for my disciples here, Krishna is building your rooms for you in Vaikuntha. So, as time went by, we ultimately built the guest house, and on the top floor of the tower facing the sea was Srila Prabhupada's quarters. So when the quarters were ready, he invited Mr. Sethi to see them. And, he told Mr. Sethi, just see what they've done for me. Marble floors, chandeliers, carved wood, such nice furniture, everything. And then he said, Mr. Sethi, I always wanted you to join us, but you always felt that you couldn't accept the austere conditions. So, Mr. Sethi, I want you to stay here. And I will stay somewhere else. Mr. Sethi, but Prabhupada, I can't stay here. Where will you go? He said, oh, I have so many places. I can stay anywhere. You stay here. So again, Srila Prabhupada demonstrated just how intense his desire was that everyone should be engaged in Krishna's service, and to what extent he was ready to sacrifice to engage one soul in Krishna consciousness.
Before we sat down at the couch, he had just walked in, and I know that he wanted me to do a lot of painting, but to prepare for his arrival, because there was only 3 devotees in the temple at that time, Satsrup Maharaj, Pradyumna, and myself. And the other devotees who were there, they came a few days before Prabhupada came, 1 or 2 days to help prepare, and they were there during his visit, but before then it was just us 3. So I complained to Prabhupada. It wasn't really a complaint, I just wanted to let him know that I really wanted to do all the paintings that he wanted me to, but this particular last few weeks, I was getting ready for you. I had to sew the Vyasasana, and I had to make advertisements of your engagements, and I had to go all around town and paste them on all the telephone poles. So it sounded like a complaint. So Prabhupada said, most indignantly and sarcastically, "Don't worry, I won't be around that long." And so I was trying to make him understand that, no, I just didn't understand priorities. So he showed a lot of compassion, and he said, when there's an order from the spiritual master, that comes first, unless there's an emergency. So he was showing that he understood. And then he walked a step closer to me, and stepped very close, and he looked me in the eye, and he said, very also like that, he said, compared to the karmis, what suffering do you have? They are struggling and suffering so much. What inconvenience do you have? That was his also compassion.
Srila Prabhupada never asked us to do anything that he personally wasn't ready to do himself. Whatever austerities he asked us to accept, he accepted more. When we went to the Ardha Kumbha Mela in 1971, we were living in tents, and it was freezing cold. It was freezing cold. But Srila Prabhupada was right there with us in the next tent. You know, maybe a little bit bigger, because he would receive people and preach. But he was right there with us. But it was so cold, I remember in the morning I wouldn't want to get out of the sleeping bag, it was so cold. So the devotees were starting to miss Mangalarti, and Srila Prabhupada was very concerned. So although I think the devotees used to heat water for him, and he would take bath later in the day, but just to set the example for us, one morning he took freezing cold bath, just like us, taking the water from the pump in the bucket and right out in the cold. I mean, when we would breathe, we would see it in the air. And maybe he even got a little sick, but he did it. And when we saw that Prabhupada was coming out and taking cold bath, then how could we stay in our sleeping bags? He was very compassionate and sympathetic, but at the same time, he wanted to elevate us, and he would push us.
But what touched my heart the most, if I can say so, was Prabhupada's concern for everyone. In one hand, Prabhupada was so strict, but at the same time, Prabhupada was so compassionate and so concerned. Like I remember Prabhupada for months, for 2 months at least, he did not eat anything. Only once in a while he would take some juice, fruit juice, and a little diluted milk. But he would inquire how the devotees were eating, how the devotee prasad was. So one day Prabhupada asked me to go and check out how the devotee prasad was. And I came back and told that the prasad was not so nice. When Prabhupada called the temple president and he chastised him, he asked why the prasadam was not nice. See, he himself couldn't eat anything for 2 months, but he was so concerned about how the devotees were eating.